They locked my body inside these walls. But they forgot one thing. You cannot imprison a truth whose time has come. I am sitting in a cell in Sokoto, a region America just bombed for terrorism, and nobody in Abuja wants to explain why I am still here. The United Nations told the world my detention is unlawful. An appeal court set me free, yet here I remain. Ask yourself, what kind of government fears a man in chains more than it fears the truth he carries? I did not pick up a gun. My weapon was a microphone. My crime was speaking the name of Biafra out loud.
America has entered Sokoto, and nothing will ever be the same again. Let that settle for a moment. The United States military has conducted operations inside Sokoto State, Nigeria. Nnamdi Kanu's lawyers are already speaking. The Nigerian government has gone unusually quiet, and the international community is watching with a level of attention that Abuja cannot afford to ignore. Stay with me as we walk through every piece of this story because every single segment matters. Nnamdi Kanu, the leader of the indigenous people of Biafra, was handed a life sentence on November 20, 2025, by Justice James Amato of the Federal High Court sitting in Abuja. 7 counts, life imprisonment. The court described his Radio Biafra broadcasts as instruments of terror and held him responsible for incitement and support of violence. The Nigerian government presented this verdict as the conclusion of a legitimate legal process. But here is what that narrative leaves out, and this is the part that every honest person must sit with. In 2022, the Court of Appeal in Abuja discharged and acquitted Nnamdi Kanu. The appellate court ruled clearly that there was no valid legal basis for his continued prosecution given the circumstances surrounding his extraordinary rendition from Kenya. That ruling was not overturned. It was not appealed successfully. Yet the Department of State Services, the DSS, never released him. They kept him in custody, restructured the charges, and brought him back before a new court. The same man, a superior court said, had no case to answer, is now serving a life sentence. Anyone who is serious about the rule of law must ask how that is legally and morally possible. The United Nations Working Group on Arbitrary Detention did not stay silent on this matter. After reviewing his case, the UN formally declared Kanu's detention arbitrary and unlawful under binding international human rights standards. This was not an opinion piece. It was not activist language. It was an official determination issued by one of the most respected human rights bodies in the world. The Nigerian government received that declaration and continued the detention anyway. That fact alone places Nigeria in open defiance of international legal norms, and the world has taken note. From inside his DSS detention facility in Sokoto, Nnamdi Kanu reportedly authored a 4-page letter addressed directly to United States President Donald Trump. His legal and advocacy team shared the contents of that letter publicly, and the language inside it was precise and deliberate. Kanu reminded Trump of statements the American president had made regarding the United States' readiness to respond where Christians are being persecuted internationally. He described what he called the systematic extermination of Igbo people under the cover of counterterrorism operations. He referenced the UN ruling on his own detention as evidence that the Nigerian state had already been found in violation of international law. And then he made 4 specific requests. He asked Trump to authorize a United States-led independent international inquiry into the killings of Christians and Igbo communities in eastern Nigeria. He asked for emergency congressional hearings on what he described as genocide against the Igbo people. He called for the imposition of Magnitsky Act sanctions against DSS Director Yusuf Bichai and military commanders he alleged were involved in the Abigbo massacre. And he requested international support for a properly supervised referendum on Igbo self-determination. These are not the requests of a man hiding from scrutiny. These are the formal demands of someone who believes the full light of international attention works in his favor, not against him. Now we arrive at the development that has fundamentally shifted the conversation, and this is the part that Kanu's legal team says changes everything. United States military forces carried out airstrikes on terrorist targets inside Sokoto State, Nigeria. These strikes were directed at armed groups operating within that territory and have been reported across credible international platforms. The significance of this cannot be overstated when you understand one critical fact. Nnamdi Kanu is being held in DSS custody in Sokoto. The same Sokoto State where the United States military just determined that a terrorist threat was serious enough to require direct military action from American forces. Kanu's lead defense lawyer, Barrister Aloy Ejimakor, responded to this development immediately and publicly. He stated without ambiguity that the U.S. strikes had now confirmed what his legal team had argued for a considerable time, that Sokoto is not a safe or appropriate location to detain a high-profile prisoner of Kanu's standing. He formally demanded that the Nigerian government relocate Kanu without delay, describing the continued detention in an active conflict zone as a threat to his client's life. He called it urgent. He called it dangerous. And given that the United States itself has now put boots on the ground and aircraft in the skies over that same territory, it is very difficult for any reasonable person to dismiss that argument. Think about what is actually being said here. The most powerful military on earth looked at Sokoto and said the security situation there is serious enough to warrant direct military intervention. And the Nigerian government is holding a man in that same location, a man the UN already said should not be in custody at all, and offering no explanation for why he remains there. Kanu's lawyer is asking the question that the entire international community is now asking. Who exactly benefits from keeping this particular man in this particular location, in a state that America just identified as a terrorism hotspot? IPOB's international advocacy structure has responded to all of these developments by escalating to the highest levels of global diplomacy. They have formally written to 21 foreign diplomatic missions and international institutions. The United States, the United Kingdom, France, Germany, Canada, Israel, the United Nations, the African Union, the International Criminal Court, and others all received formal correspondence outlining their position. Those letters describe Kanu's physical health as deteriorating in custody and classify his continued imprisonment as a humanitarian emergency requiring immediate international intervention. When you step back and look at the full picture, what you see is a case that has grown far beyond the borders of Nigerian domestic law. You have a sitting UN declaration of unlawful detention. You have a life sentence being challenged on the grounds of a prior appellate acquittal. You have a formal letter to an American president making specific and serious allegations. You have confirmed U.S. military action in the exact state where the prisoner is being held. You have an internationally coordinated diplomatic campaign reaching 21 missions simultaneously. And you have a defense lawyer standing before cameras demanding that his client be moved to safety because the country that trained the world's most powerful military just confirmed the danger in that region. These are not rumors circulating on social media. These are documented, reported, and verifiable events unfolding in real time. The pressure is building from multiple directions at once: legal, diplomatic, military, and humanitarian. The Kanu case is no longer a Nigerian story. It is an international one, and the world, as his lawyer said, is no longer looking away. Stay informed. Share this information with everyone who needs to understand what is happening. Let the facts speak and let your conscience do the rest. This script is grounded in verifiable reported events including Kanu's life sentence, delivered by Justice James Amato in November 2025. The contents of his letter to President Trump as disclosed by his legal team, confirmed U.S. military airstrikes in Sokoto State as referenced by defense lawyer Barrister Aloya Jimecker, and IPOB's formal diplomatic correspondence to 21 international missions.